5 days later, when we got the ratings, suddenly we had this #1 show on our hands. I mean, it went like that, and within 2 months, it was a phenomenon. It took us totally by surprise. We had expected that maybe we could get a couple of years at #2, you know, maybe get 2-3 years out of the show, and it became the most watched television show in the history of children's television, and the most successful financially. The franchise has made over $10 billion right now, and it's gone through 2 different hands, yeah. And continues to evolve, and each generation brings something else to it, which I think was really nice. So I actually have a report here that kind of talks about that. I hope I have the right one up here. Because what happened was we went to Universal Studios, and some interesting things happened.
Many of the fresh young faces on the network primetime schedule.
This isn't it. Sorry, that's not it.
TV.
Sorry. This is it. I may have these just in pieces. I'm sorry if I do.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
When we come back, Los Angeles turns out in force for the debut of the Power Rangers. As you might expect, the face-off between Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan in Norway Wednesday night is a sellout, with tickets being scalped at $1,000 and up. Could anything compete with that? Well, maybe the Power Rangers. Think I'm kidding? Listen to what NBC's George Lewis found in Southern California today.
It was a monumental traffic jam as 35,000 young fans showed up to view America's top superhero.
Let's hear it for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers!
Some of the kids arrived at 4 a.m. to make sure they had good seats.
They're cool.
Who's the coolest? Who's your favorite?
Billy.
Why?
Because he's smart, but he's a nerd. And he's cute.
In case you don't have a kid at home, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is a show on the Fox network that has become must-viewing for the younger set. At Christmas time, the Power Ranger dolls became a runaway bestseller. The factory was back-ordered for months. Even the creators of the characters are surprised at the success of the show and all the merchandise that goes with it. More phenomenal has become a household word. The characters have become ambassadors for the anti-drug DARE program. They're using their appeal to teach children to say no to drugs.
I think it's really important for kids to really see our faces and to understand that it's us and our characters that are really helping to portray positive role models for children.
We are the future generation of tomorrow. So if we can give out any positive message, and if one kid just listen to what we're saying, then we have done part of our job.
Done their job, made a ton of money for the producers, and today created a traffic jam in LA that stretched 5 miles long. They're planning other public appearances. America, watch out. George Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
So they literally had to close down the Hollywood freeway, 2 exits of the Hollywood freeway, because 50,000 people showed up. They had to turn away 20. The Universal Studios sold out tickets by 9:30 in the morning. They sold out the park. They'd never had an event like that before or since. There was a 4-hour late. We ended up doing 6 shows. I actually wrote that show and was there to direct it. It was like the Beatles. There was girls standing up going, "Tommy!" It was really surreal. And then later on in the year, I'm starting to run out of time, so I'm going to get to questions here. But when I went to Australia a few months later, you know, we went to Australia to start shooting the movie, and there were kids in Power Ranger costume. It was kind of odd. It's a personal story. When I arrived in Australia, I was really excited because 20th Century Fox was doing the movie. These are the guys that did Star Wars. You know, I'm going to go learn something. I was just there to deal with some issues on the TV show. It had nothing to do with the movie. And I get into my hotel room about 6:30 in the morning, and I turn on the TV, and there's Power Rangers playing. It's like, oh, good. This is what a cool omen. And those of you who know my career, the very next show that played was Robotech. So the two biggest shows I've ever had in my life were playing back-to-back in Sydney, Australia. And I'm like, this is so friggin' weird. So it became a big hit and went on and continues on. I thought Disney did a really good job of trying to bring back the franchise when they took it over. They brought a little bit of whimsy back. They were nice enough to hire me to go out to New Zealand for about 3 weeks to help them show them how to make the show. And now it's continued to evolve. Now we did go into the Saban's Menudo thing where it just kind of went, they started changing casts, and this is a question that comes up almost every time, so I'm going to answer it right now. What happened is that when Tommy joined the show, because he came by the surprise, by the way, we'd only looked, I personally, because I was in charge of story that season, I had really only looked at the first 13 episodes, and we got those going. And after those were going, I got the writers working on that, I started looking at the footage for the next one, and suddenly this Green Ranger shows up. So we had to go, I'm going up to the boss, we got a problem. And so we had to quickly cast. Fortunately, we found Jason Franks. And, but the minute we joined, the ratings went up and the toy sales went up. The minute, you know, a year later when they had a little contract, the contracts were up, they couldn't come to an agreement, the three Rangers left, when Walter and Austin and Twee left the show, and they replaced them with Johnny Bosch and Karen Ashley and Tony Cardenas, or
Stephen Cardenas.
David Cardenas. Mr. Cardenas, let's put it that way. The ratings went up and the toy sales went up. And then when Kimberly left and Catherine showed up, the toy sales went up and the ratings went up. So there was some loyalty to the original cast. They could stay as long as they wanted to work under the contracts that we had. But once they were replaced, the decision was made to change, just like the Japanese do, change the cast every year. And when it happens is you get a whole new cast and a whole new toy thing, and that's why it's a financial thing. It's worked for Japan for 35 years, and so why break it? I want to be able to take some questions, so I'm going to stop showing. I have lots of videos, and they're organized in a weird way today. So let me answer any questions you can. I'll start with you.
So like I was looking at like the pilot and like bully the guy who was that Tommy as like
the bully? No, actually there was another actor. Tommy, we didn't find him yet. No, there was a decision made after the pilot that the guy that was playing in the original, Skull was the leader and Bulk was the henchman. But the decision was made that first of all, Paul Schreier was a much better actor than that guy, considerably better. Another personal story: we're in line to get breakfast at the bowling alley that morning, and we're talking to Paul, and we're meeting. Oh, hi, I'm the producer, and I'm the writer. And he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I was a voice actor, and I did shows like Robotech. And he goes, Robotech, and he totally geeked out. He was a total Robotech fan. But the decision was made that it wasn't working. Plus, he was too mean. He was a little too dangerous, you know. So the guy who was playing Skull was a stuntman. So and we let Paulie actually cast his partner. They just brought people in and go play with him for a while. And Paul was the one who said, "This is the guy. This is the guy I want, Jason Narby." And that's how Jason Narby ended up on the show. And they're still very close, good friends. So, yes. Really fast one, because we're running out of time.
I saw a YouTube video on that was casting Sakuracon, and Paul Schreier has been brought back.
Yes.
But Jason Narby
was not
because he's actually in Iraq serving our country.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true.
That's what Paul said.
I know Paul plays games. At the time that Paul was in New Zealand shooting the current Samurai Rangers, I was doing a play in Hollywood with Jason Narby. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. I played God and he played Adam. It was an interesting thing. Yeah. No. Yeah, the pilot was actually eventually aired as the Power Rangers: The Lost episode, and I actually directed that when we brought in Jason and Zach to host it and stuff like that. No, Jason Narby, the reason, I was actually around when they did it. Paul, they wanted Jason, there was an assumption made that Jason wasn't available because he was in the middle of getting his PhD. By the way, he's now Dr. Narby. He's got a PhD in theater, theater history, I think. And there was an assumption that he wasn't available because he was still in the middle of the PhD. So that's why. One of the things that I was hired to do on Power Rangers Samurai was to write Bulk's lines. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if they used any of them because they replaced the writers about halfway through. So, way in the back.
What made you decide to make Bulk and Skull comedic characters?
Well, it needed some comedy. You know, look, at the time, you have to understand, at the time the show was up, what you had was a lot of dark heroes. The X-Men was the big show at the time. The original X-Men series was the big show at the time. So you had that and Little Clowns of Happy Town. You know, those were the two kind of pablum and Smurfy stuff and that stuff. So we decided we wanted to do something with some squeaky clean characters that were cool, but we needed some comic relief to balance out the danger of Rita and all of that stuff because we wanted to be appropriate for little kids. And laughing is fun. You know, so we just thought it would be fun. And Paulie is so good. They were only supposed to be a small part of the show, but they really kind of grew into something. And the last 5 minutes here, I'm going to show you something that'll explain why. Yes, Doctor? Yeah, actually I have. It's actually very good. There's some great stuff that he does on that.
Just recently, if anybody's watching that series, he just recently did Ninja Storm.
A month ago, yeah. You know, no, I'm familiar. I've actually talked to the guy because he was a little afraid of.
You want to go get some
It's cool. It's cool.
Sure. Yeah. You gonna meet about my girlfriend?
Yes. Well, Robert Axelrod is a voice actor. Okay. So I actually cast Robert. So I loved him. I thought he did a great job, and he's wonderful. Johnny Bosch was interesting because I was at his audition. It's his final audition, and I thought we were taking a chance because he was so. I mean, literally, he's from a little tiny town, like a suburb of a little tiny town in Texas, you know. And he'd never been to the big city, and he was a little intimidated and scared. But he had this honesty and this look. Plus, he did his, everybody, he had to be either a dancer, a gymnast, or a martial artist to be in the show. And he did this kung fu kata that just blew us away. This kung fu kata that just blew us away, and that's really what landed it for him. I thought it was great. And we were in a lot of turmoil. We had to shut down production for 2 weeks to replace the Rangers that left. So, you know, it was like great to find 3 people. And interesting, we did castings all over the country. We went to Dallas, New York, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles. All 3 came out of Dallas auditions. All 3 replacement cast members. So, and Johnny ended up with my favorite line in the movie. I'm a frog. Yes. What did I think of the voice of Saba? Well, considering I played the voice of Saba, no, that came about interestingly enough because I wasn't intending to do that. I wanted to. There was an actor by the name of Ted Lehman who I'd done Robotech with and a bunch of other stuff, and he had a really good quality. He was an older man. He was in his mid-70s, and he's the one that I wanted to play it. And I tried to find him, and I found out that he'd moved back to 76 years old and moved back to Kentucky to take care of his mother. He's 76. This is a long-lived family. And so I couldn't get him back, and so I'm starting to look for somebody to do it, and I said, well, he sounds something like this. And so I started talking like this. And they went, well, why the hell don't you do it? So that's how I ended up doing it. So, next question. Yes? Whatever happened to the Zero Crystals? I don't know. By then, I was a little out of the story side. I was more doing the live stuff. I wrote the live international tour that went around the country, and I was getting more involved in the ancillary stuff. So Zio was kind of an interesting thing that I didn't necessarily agree with, but you know, I wasn't in charge, and I went for it, and it worked. It ended up working. Although we got sued. We got sued for Zio crystals. There was a company in Chicago that had a product called Zio crystals. And they were little blue crystals that you put in the toilet to make the toilet water blue. And but that's the funny part. They sued us claiming, and they named me in the suit too, which is kind of interesting. But they sued us claiming that not only had we stolen their idea, but we'd stolen all their marketing language too. For toilet crystals? The judge threw the suit out. Next question. All right, no question. Well, go ahead.
Were you involved like casting with Samurai? Or,
No, not with Samurai. No, the only thing I did is I did give an opinion on Spike, on the Jason Narby replacement. They did ask my opinion, and I thought he looked good, and I said, well, I think he looks good, but I didn't make the decision.
But like, is that like a big kid, or is that like actually like some like 20-year-old guy?
I'm sorry. Who do you mean?
Like the new kid. That's like.
I think he's like 22, 23
Yeah,
years old.
I
Yeah.
thought like he's doing like really that type of stuff, but he's kind of like shorter, and I'm like I thought he wasn't sure he's like a teenager or something, but actually in his 20s.
No, he's in his 20s. I don't really know him. I never got to meet him. And Paulie, I talked to Paulie about him and said, yeah, he's a good kid. I mean, that was. Okay. Any more questions? I'll keep answering. Yes. Yeah, isn't that cool?
I'm just wondering, when you first got this footage, how did you go
Well, look, we talk about the voices and all that stuff. I mean, or.
Like just the character, like with the exception of like the first big monster, where you're like, oh, we should make bag jokes or something.
Oh, well, it's just because that's the creative process. That's what you do. You sit around. I mean, sometimes we did it as a group. Often we would have a story meeting with a group of us and decide how we're going to go, what kind of textures we're going to have, and then we'd send a writer off to go do it. A lot of it came right out of the writers. There was an episode where we had to name the characters' last names, and we'd never given any of them last names. And by the way, that's a big deal. We had to go through this huge legal thing to clear these names. But two of the writers, Ronnie Sperling and Jeff Deckman, are actually the ones that gave Bulk and Skull their full names, Farkas Bulkmeyer and Eugene Skulovich. It was because they had to, so they came up with something. Unfortunately, they're good writers, and it stuck. And that's kind of the way it works, is somebody throws in an idea, it develops, somebody gets a note, you rewrite it, and that's how that sort of stuff happens. We were more freaking out that we had, a turtle with a stoplight coming out of the head. That was yes?
So is that how Tommy got his last name? I take it yours?
No, there's a story behind that. Because I didn't know that. They didn't tell me. I didn't see it till it was done. Because at that time I was starting to move on to get ready with the movie and stuff like that. But they thought it would be funny. Ellen Levy-Sarnoff, who was the development executive and who we worked with, she thought it would be funny since it was Tommy, and she says, well, Tommy Oliver, ooh, that's going to be funny. And they kind of worked it in, and by the time I found out about it, it was not changeable. The problem is there's a personal story with my grandmother on my father's side, who I really never knew, and I didn't get along with. A couple times I met her, she was a real bitch, and she never got my name right. She would always call me Tommy. So it was like, thanks, Ellen, to remind me every day I watch the show how much pain I'm in. No, I'm just joking, but no, that's true. That's what she used to call me. And Ellen just laughed. Next, any more questions? All right, let me show you this. This is my two favorite